Welcome to another episode of The Brand Call You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and respected professional and an author from the US talking to us today from Turkey, Mr. Steven Kuhn. Steven, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Steven is the founder of TAB Media LLC. TAB stands for Take America Back. He's an author of a book titled Citizen Servant Leader, and we're going to speak about his book today. So, Steven, before you come to your book, a few questions for you. You have worked in combat, business, and in international environments. What shaped your idea of leadership the most?
I think it's an ongoing process. It just constantly continues to develop. But I think the first leadership lessons I had were in combat, real leadership lessons. Of course, in the military, you learn about leadership, what the structure looks like, what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. But real leadership, I realized in combat, had nothing to do with rank or position. Mm-hmm. It had to do with what you do when times get crazy.
Sure.
And that's where real leadership shows up. And the leaders that I learned from became calm, looked for what we could solve, not the problems that we had, looked for solutions. And so that's sort of my mantra is add value by solving problems. That's just how I move forward since then.
And you speak about carrying weight. When did you first realize leadership is about burden and not position?
Absolutely. Well, when they told me I was going to war and I was responsible for about 50 million worth of equipment and men, I was like, oh, okay, that's on me all of a sudden. I was 23 years old. I had no idea that I was responsible for all that. But that's just a number. But the weight actually came when one of the guys on our team was hit, and I went to him and I held him as he passed and on the battlefield. And you couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And so it was more of a, well, now not only do I have to carry the responsibility of what I'm doing here, but I have to carry this for the rest of my life. What does it mean? How can I use it to be positive? And how can I not forget this moment so it's always driving me? Mm-hmm. And so it's a burden of information. It's a burden of leading others, giving them the right impression, helping them focus on morality of leadership, which for me is honesty, integrity, and transparency, moral courage, and accountability. Yeah. Those are the 5 factors that I live by. That's the doctrine in the Citizen Servant Leader book, and all of the books that we've written, that I've written, 5 books in total about the Citizen Servant Leader. It's every day, and that's leadership at home too, because leadership always starts with yourself. So, leadership at home, leadership in your community, leadership in your business, in your job, if you have one, or in the military, first responders or whatever. So it's a big responsibility when one wants to step up, and you don't have time off. You're not, a leader out in the field and not at home. You're always a leader. You either are or you aren't.
You also set up TAB Media. Mm-hmm. What problem in society did you see that led you to create Take America Back?
Well, it all started with, my wife's Ukrainian, and as the war broke out, I watched it. We took her parents from Ukraine when it got bad and brought them here to get them out of the battlefield. And then I made one video, and I just said, look, I'm American. The British are getting ready to send rockets into Russia through Ukraine. What are they doing? And I just made this video, and it went viral. Alex Jones shared it, and a bunch of other people shared it. It was like 30 million views. And I didn't do anything with it. And then a month later, I did another video, and that went viral as well, about 30 million views. So I just started doing a video a day, and I've been doing a video a day since February 25.
Wow.
And it started gaining momentum, and I was looking at all the problems that I was talking about and the solutions that we could possibly have. And the only solution that I came up with was, first of all, our governments at the top, in the middle, we have in America, we have, the president, then the legislative, we have the Congress, and we have the Senate. And we keep changing people there, but nothing changes. And then I looked into what they call precinct seats. Precinct seats are the highest political position in your community, but they're voluntary and they're not paid, but no one knows about them. There's over 710,000 precinct seats in America. Over 100,000 of them are vacant, meaning no one showed up to fill them.
Wow.
And so I said, let me see what I can do here. So I started saying, we citizen servant leaders need to step up who have never been in politics, but have led companies, led families, led communities, move forward and step into these local seats so we could facilitate change. Because looking at the extremists in America, or the activists in America rather, they're doing this quietly and behind the scenes. They're just taking these seats and they're changing policy. So the only way to change the top is to change the foundation, which feeds the top. Right. And that's where this came from. And then it just turned into citizen servant leader taking America back. It's grown exponentially in the last months, organically. And now we're at the point where we're raising funds. We take on sponsorships. We have a monthly subscription that people can sponsor us with. We're setting up state chapters, setting up a media center, a syndicated radio show to start with, and then a newsroom after that. We have a training doctrine, which someone can take and get qualified and certified as a citizen servant leader. So we have a parallel structure alongside those who you vote for. You can vote for Democrat, Republican, or Independent, and you can look on the tab roster to see if they're certified. And if they're certified, then you yourself can read the books and take the course and know exactly how they're leading and hold them accountable at eye level, which has never happened. Amazing. A series of books like this to prepare a citizen to be fully knowledgeable, to be debt-free so it's not weaponized and they can't be leveraged, to have physical and mental resilience, to be able to work their way through the information warfare that's going on right now, and to be incorruptible. That's the 5 books, and it weaponizes the American citizen to stand up and be strong like an oak tree.
Wow, I hope you succeed. Good luck.
Well, we already are succeeding. We've placed over 40 people in precinct seats in the last 40 days. We have 3 people running for Congress, 2 people running for governor, and a slew of people running for state councils, boards, amazing. Water boards, all these different things too.
Amazing, amazing. Steven, let's now come to your book, yes. Citizen Servant Leader. Tell me, what does citizen servant leadership mean in practical everyday life?
It means that our republic was built by the people for the people, and that is no longer the case. It is not. It is no longer for the people by the people, and that doesn't mean that you have to step into leadership in your community. What it means is be aware where the leadership positions are. You can show up to a budget meeting once a month, a city council meeting once a month. Read the budget before you go. You don't need to understand the budget. Just say, why is there $1 million going to, water? Where's that water coming from? Why are we paying $1 million for it? Ask questions, hold your feet to the fire, the accountability part of it. But the book starts with you, right? Who are you directly as a person, as an individual? Not what's your title, how many businesses you have or whatever. Who are you, your identity? And once that identity is crystallized, you become purposeful in every action that you have because you have an identity that you know and you can identify with. That amplifies, your purpose that you have amplifies your identity and gives you presence. That presence allows you to hold people's feet to the fire, not only leading in your community, but leading at home, in your business, and all around your whole city and state. And that's how it goes. It goes in your home, in your community, in your city, in your state, in the country.
Amazing. You also write that we live in a time saturated with opinion and starved of competence. What does competence look like today?
Well, let's talk about integrity, because integrity is the foundation of everything we're talking about here.
Absolutely, yes.
And integrity is really simple. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't do what you say you're not going to do. And if you mess up and do something wrong, apologize and make it better.
Correct.
That's pretty much the global, the global definition of what integrity is.
Yeah.
And upon that, everything else is built. A relationship built on integrity is a lasting integrity. If there is it's a lasting relationship. If there is no integrity in your relationship, it's not a lasting relationship, and there's leverage. And one of you will lose. One of you will be taken advantage of. One of you will miss out on what's actually supposed to happen. So for me, I talk about, like I said, honesty, integrity, transparency, moral courage, and accountability as a foundation of the books and of everyone who works with us and wants to go through the program.
You describe identity as behavior, not belief.
Yes.
Can you explain this in simple terms?
Yeah. What happens when the cameras are off and no one's watching?
Yeah.
What happens when you're under pressure and you don't have to perform? That's your true identity. That's exactly who you are. When you react instead of act, when you act, the word says everything. You're acting, right? Take action. Act. You're acting. When you react, you are your true self, and that reaction has to be trained. if you want it to be based on moral integrity,
Correct.
which a lot of people unfortunately don't. And that's one of the problems that we're issuing. And now remember, we're nonpartisan. We want this. I know that underneath all of the screaming and all the propaganda and all of the left versus right, blue versus red, all this stuff, there is a foundation of morality there that we once had as a nation, and maybe we still do.
Yeah.
And it means serving something bigger than yourself, and that's the republic.
Very interesting. Stephen, you describe HIT, which is honesty, integrity, and transparency, as infrastructure
Yeah.
and not morality.
Yeah.
What do you mean by this? And give me an example if you can.
Okay, well, honesty, integrity, transparency. Honesty with yourself, why you do say and think like you do. The transparency is how you step into the world with that honesty, and that's your ongoing reputation. The byproduct is integrity. Integrity makes you authentic. Authenticity gives you the ability to dictate your own market value, for instance. Right? And that's the infrastructure that you use to live your life according to moral standards. I've been teaching HIT. I created HIT probably 20 years ago. And I've taught that all over the world, on stages all over the world, from Mayan Valley to South Florida when I was on stage with Tucker Carlson, next to Tucker Carlson. And, it's a structure that you carry with you in everything that you do. And that means, for instance, just a real simple example. You walk into a room and you sit down at the board meeting, or you sit down at a room, maybe it could be a bar. Someone else walks in and people just turn and look. Well, that person has presence. What's the thought in your head? Why are you thinking about that guy? Who's this guy? Who does he think he is? Why do you think like that? That's the honesty I'm talking about. Why are you getting defensive? Why are you looking at somebody as negative? You have no idea who they are, what they've done, their background, their accomplishments and failures and everything. It's the same thing online. I can post one video and I will get so much hate from people who don't know anything about me, did no research, did no background check, didn't even ask a question, but they already know who I am. Why are they doing that? The honesty with yourself, why you react like that. That's where the honesty I'm talking about. It's more important about being honest with yourself than it is being honest with others, because it's a natural process. When I'm honest with myself, you're obviously automatically honest with those around you.
Great response. How can leaders practice transparency without oversharing or creating chaos?
Well, you give the information to the degree that it benefits both sides, right? So you always want to have a win-win in the situations that you're in, especially in leadership, especially when it comes to subordinates, and even peer to peer. Obviously, you're not going to say, "Here are my budget numbers. Let's see if we can beat them." We're not going to go that far.
Yeah.
But it's about giving as much information so that both sides have a win-win. That's pretty much the simplest solution. That's the simplest definition.
Yeah, well said. You also say that leadership is about creating space when control is impossible.
Yes.
What does this look like in everyday life? And give me an example.
Okay, so creating space is showing up wholly and fully for the people or the person in front of you with no preconceived notions or cookie cutter solutions and no expectation of a specific outcome in mind.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't have a goal. That just means you don't want to close the deal. You want to present, add value, solve problems, right? So when you do this, you show up and you create the space around the two people or the group of people that are talking, and that creates almost a vacuum of people feeling confident enough to speak up, speak out. And that creates something together that we alone probably never would have come up with, right? So that's how we create wins for everyone, instead of one person going in, this is what I want, this is how it's got to be. And so that's a perfect example in a board meeting, for instance.
Yeah.
And making those decisions. And there's this story in the book about me making a decision. I was the joint venture head for two listed companies, one in the US and one in the UK. And we were at a meeting and there was an argument and they asked me my opinion. And my first response was to show my loyalty to the people who brought me in. So I chose their side, so to say. I knew immediately it was wrong, right? And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I think it was, we came back again, same problem. And I said, no, I'm going to do what's right. I stood up and I took ownership. I said, I'm going to take ownership of both sides. They're operational. And if it fails, it's on me. We got this. And it relieved all issues, and it relieved the pressure and created a better cohesion of both units.
Well said. Why is slowing down often more powerful than acting quickly?
Another war story. So I had a leader named Alton B. Eckert, Command Sergeant Major Alton B. Eckert. And during the war, there was chaos. We ran out of ammunition. People were getting hit, and it was a mess all over the place. He and people were going, "What's going on? Where's this guy? Where?" People worrying about what's going on. And
Mm.
he slowed everything down and didn't worry about what we couldn't control, only worried about what we could control and what we could influence.
Yeah.
That was my first lesson in slowing down. He just kept everyone calm. He didn't get excited. And he said, "What do we know? Not what don't we know? What
Yeah.
do we know? How can
Correct.
we act upon that?" That's why it's important to slow down. As a matter of fact, most soldiers that I know that are, that have been through combat, when there's a situation, let's say there's an accident on the street, you slow down automatically. You assess. What do we know? What's going on? What can we fix right now? How can we take action? When you're reacting, it's emotional. Typically, it's emotional, or it's the training that you already have embedded in you, like with fighters or something. But typically, emotional response is a wrong response, and that's online as it is in life.
Amazing. You also write about clarity when silence is comfortable. Why is silence sometimes more dangerous than speaking? And I
Because
love your
silence.
story, so give me another story.
Okay. Well, silence is can define yourself as being complicit, right, or agreeing with something. And one of those situations was the Ukrainian war. I didn't want to stick my neck out. I was like, well, who cares what I think anyway? That's an easy way to say I don't want to talk about it, right? And my wife was like, well, you talk about everything else. Why aren't you talking about this? And wouldn't it look like that you're agreeing if you don't talk out against it, or whatever it was, for or against opinion? And I had a rain of fire come down on me when I started talking about it. But what it did was is it said, okay, do I need to defend my words or explain them to those who are attacking me? And so it got down to the clarity again, right? Then it got down to creating space. So I ended up doing videos where I create space to throw around me. I don't judge. I don't take a side. Here are the facts. Here's the results of what's happening. Make your own picture. Now, people will still say, oh, you're a Putinist, or you're a Trumpist, or you're a leftist, or you're a rightist. I mean, I've been called everything from left to right to front to up, down, you name it. I've been communist, whatever, just because I'm presenting information. So that being silent is comfortable, of course. I can live my life. I don't need to do this, right? So I have a very good life. And this takes 14, 15 hours of my day now, Take America Back. And I get flack all the time online. I get emails, death threats, all kinds of stuff. And for me, as an ex-soldier, it's sort of exciting, but it's not something I want to invite.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes people say, why are you even doing this? You don't even need to do it. It's because it's a calling. This is the first calling in my life besides joining the military the first time where I have no thoughts about what I need to do because I know what I need to do. It's that certainty in me, the certainty of my abilities to deploy my genius and my experience in any given situation. That's what I've come to have through my whole life, living in 10 countries, advising multiple governments, multiple world leaders, royals, celebrities, musicians, all over the world, speaking on stage. All of this stuff, the failures, the suicide attempt, living in a monastery in the mountains of Austria for 8 months, homelessness, losing everything. That it all brought me to this point. And it brought me to this point so I could help facilitate, teach, train citizen servant leaders to take America back.
Oh, man, amazing. Steven, I have time for two more questions. You told me about that story about the sergeant who would say, slow down. And you're also gave me an example of silence. But silence is often seen as a sign of weakness. How do we know when we are staying silent out of wisdom or fear?
It's funny you say that because wisdom is gained through life experience.
Yeah.
Knowledge is gained through college, reading, learning, right? And there's a big misconception with younger people. I'm sure you did it. I did it. We knew everything. When we had our degrees, we knew everything, right? And as we go through life, I realize, oh man, we didn't know anything.
Correct.
And the older we get, this is what I've noticed since I've been online here, is the older we get, the quieter they get. And when they speak, it means something, right? In the beginning, we speak a lot and say a lot of nothing. Yeah. In the end, we speak less and mean something. So that journey that goes through life is what the wisdom that you carry with you. Knowledge not applied will not create wisdom.
Right.
Knowledge applied creates wisdom. So you learn something, you apply it throughout your life, learn, and you come eventually towards wisdom, right? And you will know when you're being silent, to hide, to protect, to stay safe, to just to have a quiet life, you will absolutely know it once you're to that point. If you're not to that point yet, where you still think you know everything because you have a degree, or you're using, oh, I have an MBA, all this kind of stuff, you're projecting something that you don't have inside of you. So you do it through paper, through degrees and things like that. When you're doing that, you absolutely know if you're being silent, well, then you're trying to protect yourself. You don't have to step up. No one's forcing anyone to say anything. But if there's a complaint in your life about the things that are going on in your country, and you're staying silent, you're being complicit.
Correct.
You're
Correct.
allowing it to happen. It's simple as that. And here's the problem. And this is why I wrote the second book. Some people say to me, and I had a police officer one time during COVID, he threw somebody on the ground who wouldn't wear a mask. And I knew him. I said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing that for?" He goes, "Look, I have three years until I retire. My whole pension is online. If I don't do this the way they want me to do it, to show force, I'm going to lose my job. That means I can't pay my mortgage. I can't send my kids to college, and I'll lose my pension." So it's called weaponized debt. If there's debt over top of you, you are absolutely maneuverable. Someone can leverage that against you. That's why I wrote the second book, Financial Freedom, Legal Ways Out of Debt. Right. The next one is physical and mental resilience, because if you're sick, you're also beholden to the medical industry. Right. So it's a whole process.
Very interesting. And my last question for you, Steven. You say we must become builders, not destroyers.
Yeah.
What does building look like at a local level as you are rolling out Take America Back?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a prime example, which we've spoken about. Let's say, for instance, you don't want to get into leadership as far as in your local community is, but you want to sort of take part. Go door to door, right? To say, hey, I'm going to start a chat group on WhatsApp or whatever, and we're gonna split up the meetings over the next year for the city council, and we're all going to hold them accountable. Are you in? Let's do this. You have to show up once a month the whole year. We got 12 neighbors. You each go once a month for a year. And here's the budget right now. This is what I'm going to talk about. You can talk about this. You can talk, for instance, that's building right there. You're building accountability structure, knowing that the city council is like, oh man, that block, Levinson Avenue just got together and now they're sending someone every month. These are the kind of things you can do locally, or you can step into a precinct seat. A precinct seat's the highest political position in your community, and they get to decide who gets to run for office, who gets the money from the government for running for office. You can hold your own fundraisers, you can do your own campaigning, the whole works, right? You don't have to run for that seat, by the way. In most states and most communities, it's an appointed seat. You just show up because they're vacant. Yeah, take it. And there's a lot that we can do locally, either in business or in politics, or outside of politics, but also in business. What are you doing as a business in your community? How are you giving back to your community? It's what America was built on, right? We were built on this. I remember when I was a kid in school, I'll be 60 next year. The police officers used to come to my kindergarten and say, "Hey, our friend and helper, Officer Jones." Now a police officer walks into a school, everybody's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
It's changed that much, where we look at each other with suspect instantly, right? We need to stop that. We need to start building.
Absolutely.
Stop destroying.
Absolutely. And on that note, Steven, I just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been with you. I just love all your perspectives. I just love the way you are giving back, and the fact that you call it your second calling after the military. Thank you for speaking to me about Take America Back. Thank you for speaking to me about your book, Citizen Servant Leader. All the very best to you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.